Kind of got off on a late start that morning. I trade and sell horses quite a bit and had a guy stop in and looked at some horses, and then the crew was already getting cows gathered up.
We're branding calves, and so we'd been working it had been a long day. It was towards the end of it. We only had maybe 20 left to do out of 200.
I was facing the trap, and I seen Brinley walking back and forth, helping Jesse.
She was helping all day. She was tagging calves, and I told her, I could tell she was getting tired. And I was like, well, why don't you go play with the kids? You don't need to keep help. She's like, no, I'll finish. She was going back to get another tag, and I heard somebody yell, there's a cow, and I look up right when it hit her.
Hit her right in the side of the head, knocked her flat on her face, and then just stomped her right in her back.
We could tell, because we deal with animals all the time, that it was bad. We didn't know how bad.
We had relatively little information. We knew that we were responding for a pediatric female in the field who it was reported had been trampled or stepped on by livestock. On the way there, we got additional information that made it clear that she was very, very sick. The word that I cannot get away from when I describe what Brinley first looked like to us is blunt, and I apologize if it's too much, but the word is broken. Brinley was a very broken young lady in that moment in time. Her heart rate was way too high, her blood pressure was way too low. We knew that she was still bleeding internally. The amount of blood that we were seeing outside her body was not all that was going on. There was clearly internal bleeding going on. We knew that her right chest had seen a huge amount of trauma. It was not the right shape. There was clearly much more blood and air escaping from that part of her body than anybody wants to see, even an adult, never mind in a young lady.
Got in the helicopter and a lot of stuff went through my brain. Good, bad. A lot of it, like I ran my life what it'd be like without Brinley in it. I couldn't imagine it. She always makes everything so much better.
We landed on the helipad, unloaded the patient, brought her downstairs to a room filled with people who were tuned in and ready to help.
When Brinley first came into the pediatric ICU, she wasn't very responsive or opening her eyes. She wasn't herself.
She was in cardiac arrest, so her heart was barely beating. She had no pulse. We had to place a chest tube in order to evacuate a lot of blood and air that was compressing her lungs. Once we were able to do that, her lungs and her heart started working much better. We then diagnosed multiple injuries, including multiple rib fractures, a lung collapse. She had blood outside her lungs. Her lung had been injured severely. She had a liver injury, she had a spleen injury, and then later on, just a few days later, we were able to obtain a CT scan of her head because there was some concern that she wasn't waking up appropriately. And that was probably the scariest moment because we found multiple strokes in her brain that had likely come from the injury to her lung.
Everybody was super good about explaining things to us, even though it was the situation it was.
We were able to save her life and act very quickly because everything was ready and everyone was ready. And when you got nurses getting IVs, when you have surgeons placing chest tubes, when you have an ED physician doing an assessment, when you have somebody else recording, when you have somebody else hanging blood, there's a lot of stuff going on in a trauma bay that can be pretty intimidating, but it ran exactly the way it was supposed to.
To see that many people could work together and it be flawless. They call out who's doing what, and everybody's just a team.
With Brinley, like, she knew when her family was there and knew that they were with her, but she was definitely feisty. She worked hard, and that's probably why she was able to recover the way she was.
When she started coming to, the first thing, she just started giving everybody a hard time, and I was like, she's gonna be okay. I'm like, I can handle the rest of this as long as she still has that part of her personality. And then she just gradually kept getting better, and it was crazy how fast she bounced back.
She is doing phenomenal. She got out of the hospital into May. In that July, she actually showed her 4-H steer by herself. She was leading him around. He weighed 1,400 pounds. She has no fear.
She was starting to get her depth of her vision back, and being back with the horses. Animals, they're natural therapy for people.
And someone like Brinley, where she's in the hospital for 20 days, that can be very hard and very tiresome for a family. It's already stressful enough, and the fact that we can provide that care here is just so important to the communities and the families.
I think just being in the comfort of her home and family and friends and people keeping her active and going helped extremely.
We are one of the most rural pediatric hospitals in the entire country. You need so many specialties, and that includes pediatric surgery, ENT, urology, hematology, oncology, an intensive care unit, and so much of that played such a huge role with Brinley and her care.
But when these systems sit idle, available but idle, it can be easy to wonder if we really need them. But Brinley's case is a perfect example of where every single one of those elements in that chain was needed and functioned perfectly to result in a very good outcome for her. Had any one of those elements not been available, it's probable that Brinley's outcome would have been catastrophically different. The value of donors to us is they help us make sure that all of those elements are going to be available when they are needed.
St. Luke's Children's means everything to us. Without it, we wouldn't have a daughter. They said if we would have been 5 minutes out, she wouldn't have made it.
I'm just thankful for St. Luke's. Once you're in their hands, it's going to look up. So it means the world.